When it comes to serial killers and the shocking details of the horrible crimes, very few can compare to the sick and twisted Ted Bundy. Not only did Ted Bundy have pure, insurmountable evil inside of him, but he played the part of a completely normal, successful person on the outside, which made him all the more dangerous. Ted Bundy was a clean-cut law student, had many girlfriends, was a member of the Washington State Republicans, and worked for a suicide prevention hotline. He was a mastermind manipulator and had everyone around him fooled. Even after being arrested, he managed to escape custody twice and keep himself alive on death row by giving information in carefully calculated bits. Ted Bundy has been described as charming, handsome, and even sensitive, yet these things could be further from the truth. Now we'll look at 11 horrifying things Ted Bundy did to his victims. Number 11. Bludgeoned women with metal bars. He didn't always wait for an opportunity to snatch women up off the streets. Ted Bundy actually broke into homes and dorm rooms to rape and murder women. On the night of January 4th, 1974, Bundy broke into the basement bedroom of an 18-year-old student. He bludgeoned her with a metal rod from her own bed frame and raped her. He even sexually assaulted her with a speculum and then left her lying there in a pool of blood. She survived, but was already in a coma when her roommates found her. She suffered permanent brain damage. Number 10. Bundy raped and murdered children too. On February 9th, 1978, in Lake City, Florida, Ted Bundy kidnapped, raped, and murdered 12-year-old girl named Kimberly Leach. He then dumped her body under a pig shed and skipped town. Bundy also lured 12-year-old Lynette Dawn Culver away from her junior high school in Pocatello, Idaho. He abducted her, took her back to his hotel room, where he raped her, drowned her, and threw her body in a river north of Pocatello. Number 9. Bundy was a necrophile. It wasn't until the interview of 1980s that Ted Bundy admitted the full extent of his sexual deviance to authors Stephen McCullough and Hugh Ainsworth. He said after raping and killing women, he liked to spend the night with their corpses. He would have sex with the bodies and often revisit them for additional sexual assaults until they were too decomposed or the animals got to them. Bundy kept the heads of 12 of his victims. He decapitated them with a hacksaw, washed their hair, applied makeup to them, and engaged in sexual acts with them. Number 8. Bundy ate his victims' flesh. For Bundy, it was all about control. He claimed it wasn't lust or hatred or revenge that drove him. He said he was attracted to his victims and wanted to possess them. To Bundy, rape wasn't enough. To truly possess them, he had to kill them, and in some cases consume parts of them so he would become part of him. Number 7. He attacked 4 women in a sorority house. After breaking out of jail and fleeing to Florida in January 1978, Ted Bundy broke into Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University and committed a brutal mass rape and murder within 20 minutes. He bludgeoned 21-year-old Margaret Bowman to death with a chunk of firewood, then garroted her with a stocking. Next he beat and strangled 20-year-old Lisa Levy. He sexually assaulted her with a bottle, ripped one of her nipples, and bit deeply into the flesh of her buttocks. He then bludgeoned 2 other sorority sisters, named Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner, on his way out of the house. They were so badly beaten, they suffered broken jaws, missing teeth, and lacerations. He got a few whole blocks away before breaking into another student's house. He severely beat Cheryl Thomas with the club before calling it a night. Number 6. He kept souvenirs. After his arrest, it came to light that Ted Bundy kept Polaroids of his victims hidden in the utility closet by his apartment. But sometimes the photos weren't enough. He would also keep severed heads and random body parts. When asked why he kept such morbid tokens, he replied, "When you work hard to do something right, you don't want to forget it." Number 5. He would often bite his victims. Many of Bundy's victims were discovered with bite marks on their breasts, buttocks, and almost all over their bodies. One victim was bitten so badly on her breasts that one of her nipples was almost completely detached. Number 4. Bundy treated murder like a sport. He would actually engage in a catch and release type of training during the off-season. He would pick women up simply to keep his skills sharp and then let them go. He claimed to have a PhD in serial killing and felt that killing was no different from cooking, repair work, or any other trade that required regular practice. If his victims were just toys to him, he wanted to possess them, play with them, and then cast them aside. Number 3. Bundy tried to manipulate his victims' families into saving him. As if he hadn't already caused his victims and their families enough pain and suffering, he tried to manipulate them into saving him on top of everything else. Ted Bundy actually tried to convince the families of his victims to faxing letters to Florida Governor Bob Martinez, pleading for mercy and reducing his sentence to life in prison. In exchange for helping him dodge the death penalty, Bundy agreed to finally tell them where the remains of their loved ones were. Disgusting. Obviously, his little ploy failed, and he was sentenced to electric chair, which pumped him full of about 2,000 volts of electricity on January 24th, 1989. Number 2. He would impersonate authority figures. Even after police released sketches of Bundy and the make and model of his car, he still found ways to manipulate women into wandering off with him. He would often disguise himself with facial hair or draw on moles and pretend to be an authority figure. He'll pretend to be a police officer or firefighter to get teens and young women to feel safe enough to leave with him. Once he lured them out of public areas, he would knock them out, handcuff them, and drive off to some secluded area to act out his violent, twisted fantasies. Number 1. He pretended to be weak and injured. Ted Bundy had a stash of plaster for casts, arm slings, and crutches in his home. He'd put fake casts on one of his legs or arms, then go out in public pretend to struggle with books and boxes, hoping a woman might help him. The unsuspecting lady would smile at his clumsy charm and offer to help him pack everything up in his car. As soon as she was positioned just right, he would strike them over the head with a crowbar, toss them in the car, and handcuff them. That will be it. They'll never be seen alive ever again.